Eddie, turn that down, man. It is blasting my ears. Eddie, the producer, likes the new music that we were able to put out. The housing market is going to hit more of a correction than I've ever imagined in my lifetime. There's one thing I have constantly maintained was that we weren't going to see home prices hit like historic numbers until we had a job market collapse. And the Fed just pretty much announced that's going to happen. So we have a special guest coming in. Oh, and I want to ask you really quick before introduce our guest. I want to ask, did you guys watch the speech from Jerome Powell on Wednesday? I want to know if you watched it. But our special guest this week, hi, Virginia Hudson. Thank you for becoming a new channel member. Yay. Ken Pozek, who a subscriber asked us to bring on. He's going to be talking about the Orlando market. And hi, Ken. He's going to be talking with us about the Orlando market. And he's going to be, we're going to be discussing what we think is going to happen in his specific market, especially with them trying to tank like 1.2, 1.3 jobs across the United States. So if you have any questions throughout the stream, please be sure to write the word question ahead of time and we can get into it. So Ken, how the heck are you? Can you tell
I'm doing well.
Tell everybody a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ken Pozek from Orlando, Florida. I'm a real estate agent. I've got a team here. I've been doing this for 17 years. So I went through the last crash and then the up, and then now we're gonna see what's gonna happen. So I'm excited to just talk about real estate and what's going on in Florida.
When did you start? What year?
2003.
Oh, I started in 06, 07. I started in 07. I started when it was bad. So
when it was bad. Yeah.
When it was bad. But that was the this crash. If like I'm willing to say if you think it's gonna crash, it's very possible now. But I don't think this was gonna look nothing like the last crash. I have many reasons for that. But what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I think the last crash was caused by subprime market and bad mortgages. And now you've got a lot of people, there's so many factors that we didn't have this time around last time. Like you got a lot of people that are locked in at 2 and 3% interest rates that are not moving. Like they're good, like they can afford their house. They bought 2-3 years ago when prices were decent, and they're just not going to move. And I don't think we're going to see this massive wave of foreclosures unless they start getting rid of jobs, like you mentioned earlier. And so that's the one caveat here is like, we got great job market. If that changes, then the whole game changes. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
Well, interest rates continue to climb too. So I think the last time I saw it was like 6.7 at the 6.07, 6.7. It was up there. And so like, if they continue to climb, that means more houses sit on the market. The longer the homes sit on the market, the more prices drop. So if the Fed keeps they keep tweaking this, people are gonna lose a lot of equity in their houses.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, and it's like you think about, if you wanted to do a home equity line of credit right now, rates are still kind of crazy, so you're not jumping to grab that money. So it's an interesting thing that the Fed's doing. I mean, do you think it's helping or do you think it's hurting?
Helping the housing market? Well, it was unaffordable. The housing market in general. It was unaffordable for the average person trying to buy a house. Anybody that's starting into the real estate market, to look at a house that was normally $200,000 to see it $400,000 in 2 years is literally ridiculous. And that happened in some markets, and it got to the point where it was unaffordable. The median income in the area could not afford the median home or even the lower end home. And to find a lower end home was impossible. I actually had somebody on here last week, or was it the week before, from Boise, Idaho, who had a market that exploded, much like Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And even now, when they've had massive price drops in homes, the one market that still is maintaining high and like really high and not a lot of listings are the homes that would be like the under 400,000. There was literally hardly any closings in that sector because nobody was selling their houses. They're just, nobody took a price reduction under 400,000.
And what's weird is we're seeing the opposite here. Like everything 4 to 900 is still doing really well. Everything under 400 is selling at like 90% of list price, right? Which like 4 months ago, everything was 110, 115%. And so it's very weird to see. I think a big piece of that is you have these iBuyers that have essentially disappeared overnight. And so you have very little competition with those folks. being cash buyers, and then you have the people that were really squeezed out in that 400 and under number that just can't afford it now because of interest rates. And so that's actually in our market, the area that's getting crushed the most is the sub 400 market.
Well, I used to live in Orlando, and there are like numerous subdivisions that are the 3.2s, like huge PUDs, like 6,
Yeah.
7, 800 square, like they have at least in one neighborhood 800 houses, and they're all 3.2s, 3.2, 3.2. We might find a 4.2,
Right.
But do you think that's the reason why, is because there's just a lot of those type of homes? Like in our area, there really isn't, like they have, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses, but they're high end. What they're building now is high end. They're building for a more luxury buyer than in years past. And anything that's the 3.2, they're kind of old and need a lot of work.
Yeah, I feel like the new construction laws and like the way that zoning went, they made it like every new subdivision around here that's been built in the past 5 to 7 years, they were almost required like a townhome 2.2 product or a single family rear entry garage, which is like a 3.2 all the way up. And so like where we live in like the Winter Garden area, it's 20,000 homes, and they said, hey, if you want to redevelop this, you're going to have to offer like apartments, condos, townhomes. Like it's got to be a really good mix. And so for those areas are still doing really well. But like some of the older areas, like you're talking about, that were built maybe 30 years ago, those are the ones that are hurting, because people are like, do I really want to buy a house, renovate it, have to do all this stuff, or do I just want to go buy new construction? And so we still have a lot of new construction inventory. All of a sudden, we went from like 3-4 months ago, no new construction inventory, to now where builders are knocking down our door like, hey, can you we're going to give these incentives and we're going to do these things to get people in. So definitely a different market.
Virginia said, I joined because of your awesome overalls. Everybody gives me garbage about my overalls. Just kidding. Thanks for sharing information that would otherwise be over my head. I want to ask you this. So if you were kind of like, I have to sell my house this year, would you tell somebody to sell their house in the Orlando market now, or wait until the spring? Because I know it slows down. Like now that school has started, slows down a bit. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think so like typically right around Thanksgiving all the way through the end of January has been our slow time here. And so I think it's either get on now, especially before rates continue to climb, or wait around till the next spring and then see kind of what happens after election season's over and all these other kind of things settle, hopefully. I think that next spring we're going to be a little bit more sane. Hopefully this doesn't become a 2, 3, 4 year kind of run, but that's statistically where I would say list in the spring or right now.
I'm gonna say that we're gonna be seeing 7 and 8 interest rates starting in the beginning of the year, end of this year, the beginning of next year. I don't see it going down. Like they are really wanting to. They're really wanting
put
to
the brakes on
put
it.
Put a hurting, and he even said it. Jerome Powell said, he was like, this is going to hurt and be uncomfortable for people. And we talked about it, how this is going to really affect people, but we needed to get to this number. I'm like, oh, God. Yeah. So I don't see them bringing it down. What is your opinion?
I mean, so it's very interesting because 2 meetings ago, they said, hey, this is going to go up for the next 2, and then we're probably going to bring it back. And then all of a sudden that changed very quickly because inflation wasn't barely touched, right? I mean, you're looking at, that's what they expected. Hey, we're going to put the brakes on. It's going to happen really fast. And then, oh, maybe this is going to take longer time. I think if we could see 7 or 8% interest rates and they do all the things that they say that they're going to do, hopefully by mid next year, rates do start to pull back. I talked to one of the heads of a big wholesale mortgage company, and they're forecasting that by next fall that they're going to be back in the 5s or high 4s. But TBD, right? I guess it all depends on how this actually works or doesn't work.
I don't see how that could be possible though. Like if you listen, he reads it like stereo instructions. He has no emotion into anything what he's reading. Like you can watch the.
I don't know that he knows what he's doing.
I'm convinced he does it because he kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth. And so the reporters were saying, well, wait a minute, if you're talking about that 2.2 blah, 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 that's 1.3 million jobs. Are you saying that you're going to cut 1.3 million jobs? And he was like, well, we have to kind of do that to get the number that we need. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and then they asked him about the housing prices and what they needed to be at. And she said, you said you wanted to reset the housing market. And he's like, well, I mean, not by reset. I wasn't looking at any specific data when I said reset. I'm like, you're a numbers guy and you don't know what you mean by reset. You're the one who said the word. What you have to have, he has to have an achievable number that he has in his head that he
Sure.
wants people to be at, you know, like, well, I'm not really, you know, when I said that, I wasn't really like, I hadn't had some arbitrary number in my head. I could have killed
You're
him. I could have walked
you're
through
the
the
numbers
street.
guy. You're the numbers
Yeah, like,
guy. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at my E-Trade account and it's like, like awesome. Like right as soon as he got off stage, like the stock market tanks. I'm like, this is awesome. This is going to be fun.
what did Powell say? He said a lot. He said a lot, especially about the housing market. And like, I had to re-listen to it several times. I even had my husband, because I've been sitting on this because I'm filming a video right now, and I've been sitting here talking to my husband about it for like the last 5 days. I'm sure he's sick of it, but I'm like, listen to this part. He got so annoyed with me, he actually fell asleep in this beanbag chair behind me. Because I kept rewinding it. I mean, like, did he actually say that? Let me hear her question again, because like maybe I'm hearing this wrong. You know, he wants people to suffer. He wants to remove as much equity from people's homes as possible, so he can make homes more affordable. When the solution really is to build more houses in areas for more affordable people, you know, like
That's
to make it more
100%
affordable.
true.
But we're not going to do that. We're not going to help the, you know, private sector with building materials and making land less, you know, more accessible and reduce the amount of red tape they have to go through to build more affordable houses. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to take all that equity from the average American, and then we're going to just take it back. We're just going to keep taking it back. We're just going to tank their job. Oh my God, it just makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, that's actually something they're doing here in Orlando. So in Seminole County, the board met and they're trying to make it very, very easy for developers to get through at least the initial phase. Now they're not going to change like code enforcement and the way houses need to be built, but like up front, just making it an easier, less like red tape kind of thing. And I think that's huge. And then we've got, you know, you've been in Orlando, so Lake County is majority rural. And so finally these developers are like, hey, if you're willing to drive 40 minutes, we can get you back into the 200s, 300s, you know, whereas where we live, you can't get into anything under 700-800. And so that was starting to happen here more and more. But I think that a lot of builders are like, what just happened? Like we had all these plans and now like everything's up in the air. So it'll be an interesting time.
I actually lived in Lake County. My parents lived in Eustis, and when we first moved there, I lived right there in Eustis.
You wouldn't recognize it. I don't know when the last time you've been back, but
I don't want to go back. There's no reason. None. A question: How is a rural home with extensive upgrades and only one neighboring home that isn't a comparable in size and style or number of stories appraised value? You'd have to talk to the appraiser and how they come up with that. Normally what they do is that they can't find anything in that, like in that general area. They find everything that's in that specific MLS that equates to the same house. So even though it's not in the neighborhood, they may be able to find one down the road or three roads down that has the same upgrades and would be like at the same level, even though it's not in that direct area. That's normally what an appraiser does. Do you agree, Ken Pozek?
I used to be an appraiser, so that was our whole thing. So rural, we're always my least favorite to do as an appraiser because it was always so hard. But basically, banks have different stipulations, and they want you to be in the same zip code, the same school district. But if you're in a rural area, you can go typically up to 5, sometimes even 10 miles away, if there's really just no good comparables. But then they'll look at size and lot size, and there's a lot of things to kind of compare and contrast to get up to their number.
Yeah, sometimes though, if you're so out of the ballpark, like this one neighbor that we have is got like an 8-bedroom house in this neighborhood. It's like, how many 8-bedroom houses are in the area? Like, and it's so beyond what the neighborhood is. It's not, there's nothing going to be comparable, not a thing. Right. And like, who does that? Don't ever do that. Like,
don't ever do that.
You be consistent with what's going on in your area. I know you want to be different, but don't do that. That's it's going to bite you in the butt in the long run.
That's right.
So if you have any questions, go ahead. Jerry Prusa has a question. Welcome, Jerry. Nice to see you again. Just watched JP said he's raising rates, look for a 75 to 100 point for the next few meetings. Absolutely. Yep. He's going to keep cranking it to us. Kristina, how will the crash look different? A crash is a crash after all. I don't know. Like, this is the whole thing is like, I don't know what number Jerome Powell wants it to be to in order for him to stop what he's doing. He wants, that's the part that scares me.
That's an interesting question. Or like, when someone says a crash is a crash, no, I can't find this online anywhere, but like define what a crash is. Is a crash 10%? I think it was 33% or 32% in 08 from like 07 to 2010. But the last recession, I think it was like roughly 30%. So is that our new definition of crash? And if so, we went up 30% the past 2 years. So, or is it, what number is that? I'm sure Jerome has a number in his head, but again, he didn't mention it. So it's very much so like a wait and see sort of game.
If we reach levels that were gained, if we reach levels of 2019, right before the crash, right before the pandemic, that's a crash to me.
That's a crash. Yeah, agreed. Crash. Yep.
And the way it sounded, that's kind of like where he was headed, because he was like, "This is since the beginning of the pandemic, these numbers were unsustainable."
So let's
we need to bring it back in line.
So it goes back there, right? And then they bring rates down, and then everybody goes crazy again. And then we're just right back where we started, and they didn't actually solve the problem. That's the thing that kind of irks me. Yeah, it's just like, hey, we're just going to kick it down the road a little bit farther is really what it seems like a lot to me. Or maybe they're just waiting, like, hey, maybe we just need a little bit extra time and then to figure out what we were going to do. I don't know.
The other thing I was thinking about, the only way this would backfire on them, if everybody just said, well, we already know the builders don't want to build anymore, so they're not going to build anymore because they're not going to lose any inventory. They're like, screw that. We're not going to do it. Buyers are like, no, I'm not going to buy because the home prices are too expensive and interest rates. I'm not buying a house at like, I don't know, 10% or 9%, forget it. And then home sellers are like, I am sitting in a 2 or 3% loan. I'm not selling. So if it just freezes
X amount of dollars, freezes everything.
It freezes everything. I mean, there's going to be some people that are affected. There's no doubt about it. But what you and I had talked about before, I think the market that's going to get hit first and get hit pretty bad is the Airbnb market, because of the fact that if you don't have a job, you don't have vacations. If you don't have vacations, you can't rent Airbnbs. So either A, those people are going to turn into landlords that have long-term rentals, or B, they're going to end up selling it. So that would be that's who I think is going to get affected first, and affected hard, in my opinion, except for the people that lose a job, of course.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't know that, did he mention anything about like the job sectors they're going to be going after, or like, pulling back on that? I don't know about you. Like I have 11 employees, like W2 employees, and I've had to pay them more and more and more to get them to stay, give them more attractive packages because other companies are wooing them away. And, is it just that I don't know. How do you solve that, right? Because with inflation, you have to pay people more because everything costs more. And so that's the root cause that I'm like, some adult in the room, please explain to me how you're going to fix that, because that's what we need to be going after.
But the median amount of income coming to the average American right now has dropped for the last 2 years. So that's just came out. Eddie and I were talking about that too. So
have you seen the savings rates? That's actually something that I was talking to another business owner friend of mine this morning. So the average American savings rate through COVID like skyrocketed, right? People had some extra income because they weren't going out and spending it. I mean, we were all staying home. Right now, like the average income or average savings for the average American is like $0. Like everybody's living month to month is what it seems like. And so that is scary.
And that's how it was during the last crash as well.
Exactly.
If they continue to do this, I think we're going to see, I don't even know how low it could go. But if we saw, let's just say a 36% reduction in prices, that's a crash. That's a crash.
Yeah, that would be a crash. That would be a crash. I just don't know if I agree. That would be a crash. You look at though, it's happening all over. So the Bank of Canada raised it 75 basis points. The Bank of England raised it 50 basis points. And so it's going around all around the world. I don't know it's not like a localized problem. That's for sure.
Absolutely not. No. And whenever we talk about these things and people are like, well, this, we did this and we did that. I'm like, we're not like, don't think we're unique. Go open up the UK newspaper. Go
Right.
look at the headlines in Australia. You think our
Yep.
home prices are terrible? Theirs are even worse. They're
Agreed.
even worse. During the
Yeah.
pandemic, they decided to start a home buyers, like first home buyers like scheme. They called it a scheme, but it was like a, give you a down payment kind of thing.
Mhm.
And all that did was, as crazy as we were here, it made it even worse in Australia because they have like a specific line that like houses just stop. It's like all built up and then desert,
Yeah.
and so there's so the houses went crazy expensive, crazy
Ugh.
expensive. So we're not the only ones, but they even got it worse. I don't know how they're going to fix it, but I don't really care. I mean,
Right.
and this is what Eddie and I were talking about. This is from the U.S. Census, the income in 2021. Go ahead. All right. Oh, there he is. The real median household income was $70,784 in 2021. Not statistically different from 2020, the estimated 71,186. So it went down. Went down.
It's wild,
That's
right?
terrible. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a wild ride.
With everything else costing 6, 7, 8% more.
Oh,
So
food, gas, I mean,
everything.
everything. There isn't a thing that's not cheap. Like, what's cheap right now? I don't even know anything that's cheap.
Nothing.
Certainly not airlines. If you knew what I paid to get to I'm going to California on Tuesday, and it's
Oh,
crazy.
yeah?
Yeah.
What are you going for? Oh,
Vid
you
Summit.
oh, so jealous. Good for you.
You should be. What is the truth behind the Florida insurance rates? When, where would you need to buy additional flood and wind insurance? Go ahead, my friend. This is on you.
Yeah, so we had a massive fraud kind of thing going on through Florida where you could get home insurance and then either, so we've got a hurricane coming this week, right?
Mhm.
But you could go 5 years from now and say, "Hey, I had hurricane damage. I never got around to calling, but I need a new roof," even though
Mhm.
your roof was just essentially old. And so
Trash.
insurance companies were required to, because if there was hurricane damage, to repair it or replace it. And so you have a lot of roof fraud going on. And so insurance company says, "Hey, listen, Florida, if you're going to make us do this, we're not going to insure here anymore." And so you had a lot of people pulling out, which caused supply and demand where insurance rates started going through the roof. And so, like my own personal experience on my own house, newer home, that sort of thing, it went up $500 over the past 2 years. So my insurance used to be about $1,100 a year. Now it's $1,600. And so a lot of that just because there's not a lot of providers. So the state government is now getting involved and saying, okay, maybe we should put some sort of timelines on some of this stuff to get more insurance companies to be willing to come back. Beyond that, flood insurance, so that kind of thing. If you're in a flood zone, you're required to get flood insurance. I would say the great majority of my clients that are not in flood zones just don't get flood insurance because our houses are all built up pretty high. So, and we don't live on the ocean in Orlando. Now, if you live over on the coasts, something that you probably want to consider, if you're close enough to the coast to worry about it.
I will say this, and you can just say what you want. I don't care what house you have. You should always have flood insurance. You have no idea. You have no idea. Like something backs up. It's so cheap. It's like literally, $300 a peace of mind, especially if you don't live in a flood area. Sometimes if you're really not in a flood area, it's like $30 a year. It's so incredibly inexpensive to have that kind of peace of mind because when a flood does come through, you're just like, thank God I had flood insurance. Like here in the state of Louisiana, we're below sea level. I am not in a flood. I'm not in the floodplain. And I had let my flood insurance lapse. And then we had a really bad storm. And I'm on a hill, by the way. I'm on a hill in this little thing. So I'm like, the street is down here. There's no way that the water is going to get up this high. We
Right.
had gotten like 8 inches of rain in less than an hour. It was like insane.
Yeah.
All the streets here were flooded and the water was just coming up from the street up to, and I was like, it's coming up the driveway. It's coming up the driveway. And I'm looking in my backyard and there's a drain out there in the backyard and it's coming from the back. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to be those people that let their freaking insurance drop. I was so sick. And I called my insurance provider and I'm like, please sign me up again. It was so funny because he's like, you're like the 15th call. What neighborhood are you in?
Nice.
I was like, chat, like I told him, and he's like, oh, yep, there. I got a bunch of those.
Yeah.
You getting ready for this?
Depending on the other areas, yeah, we are getting ready for that. I mean, so it's some of our areas insurance, it's like another $1,000 a year. So it gets to be a little cost prohibitive depending on where you're at. But I mean, if you're next to a lake, for sure, why not? Why not go get flood insurance? But there's plenty of areas that are just out in the like dried up area where you're just so far away from the water. But you're right. If it's not cost prohibitive, you might as well.
Yeah, it's so cheap. It's so cheap. I hope you're going to stay safe from the hurricane, but I don't think it's going to hit your area.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thankfully,
Horn
Central Florida is great.
Horn insurance, no relation to me. Horn insurance. Question: are you guys having issues with houses not appraising for loan? My son lost a few deals like to this. In our area, we've had some that appraised under what the contracted price was, and it was adjusted, but it was like $3,000, or it wasn't anything significant. But appraising has been one of those things that, between the banks, the real estate agents, and the people buying and selling, has been a source of contention, because one appraiser will come through and they're so afraid of losing their license after what happened from the last housing crash, when the home prices were going up quite quickly in our area. Some appraisers were not adjusting for how much homes had been selling. So they would say, well, the house is appraising at 330, but the contract is for 370, and the house right next door just sold for 375. So like, where are you getting this number?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there
I feel
was
like the last time around, I remember reading so many articles. I was an appraiser, and at the time, 03, 04, 05, banks were calling, like that was when banks could actually talk to us as appraisers and say, hey, this sold for $500,000. I need you to appraise it for $500,000. And then you had an ethical dilemma of like, do I listen to my person who's paying me, or do I just tell you what the facts are, right? I've always, that's why I was not the greatest appraiser with a huge amount of business, because I was like, hey, the comps are this. I'm not going to push it because you want me to. Yeah. But now, because of all of that and the way that so many appraisers were losing their license and getting massive fines, a lot of them are skittish to push value, right? Especially as the market pulls back. We haven't seen many appraisal gaps lately because pricing has sort of flatlined and or pulled back in some areas. And if appraisers are using 6-month-old comps when things were really, really hot, we just don't have issues. We had a lot more a year ago.
Do you think that your market is going to remain stagnant for quite some time, or do you believe it's going to start pulling back after the Fed did their thing on Wednesday?
I feel like we've got a tale of two cities here in Orlando. So you've got the Airbnb second home market, and then you've got the people that live here full time. And I think the suburbs and the downtown area are still going to do really well. We still have a lot of people moving here, and they like apartments aren't keeping up at all. And like there was a new place that just opened up, 300 units they leased out in 2 weeks. Like I have a small place, a duplex that we own in downtown Orlando as an investment. I put it up for rent. We had 62 applications.
Jeez.
So like crazy, right? And I listed at like top of market. So I got to go through, just pick who had the best credit, the best debt to income ratio. I mean, wild. So I think in the suburbs and the downtown areas, I think we're going to do just fine. I do think that we'll see a pullback in the resort market.
Okay. So like around the Disney area and those Airbnbs and
those Airbnbs. Yeah. If it's not required, if it's not like Airbnbs in our area don't kill it financially anyways. A lot of times people are taking a monthly hit in order to own their Airbnb, like to say that they have a vacation rental, unfortunately. And so I think when people start getting squeezed, they're going to be like, that status symbol of me saying that I own a home in Florida, I don't really need that. So let's list it. I see that happening.
No, I don't know about your market, but do you have a lot of younger people that have been priced out of the market? And if there is a dissolving of the Airbnb market, would that help them, do you think?
I do. Yeah. Especially because these Airbnb like areas. So Orlando, as you know, but for those watching that don't, there's certain areas that allow Airbnbs and others that don't. And so those markets typically that allow Airbnbs, they're very resort feel, but they have like bad schools and like, because nobody's invested in the infrastructure or like everything else. So if somebody moved into the area and said, hey, listen, like, we want a resort style house, and the prices pull back. We can afford it there. Maybe the schools start doing better and they start investing more. But I do think it would be an opportunity for people that have been priced out of some of the more popular suburbs to move in those areas for sure. And it'd be close to work. I mean, like we've got so many theme park jobs and hospitality jobs, and those people need to live somewhere. And that, right now they're getting subsidized by Disney and some other places, but most of them are having to drive an hour and a half just to get to work.
I used to drive. Previous to my career as a real estate agent, I was a hairdresser in Orlando, Florida. And I used to drive that 45-minute drive from Mount Dora all the way up to the Altamont Springs Mall.
Yeah, Mount Dora is that's a hike. Now that I'm thinking that Mount Dora to Altamont that's a for a real hike for sure.
Okay, it says, question, can Ken comment on the house? We already did this. Oh, we were just talking about the insurance. How many, what are the big names that left in the home insurance companies that left? Was it State Farm? Did they leave?
No, State Farm's still here. Geico's still here. Farmers is still here. There's still a bunch of big ones here. It's a lot of like the smaller mid-tier insurance companies that pulled out. So before you would go to a broker and you'd say, hey, I want the best insurance rate. And they'd have 25 different ones to send you. Now they're like, here's our 5, that's the difference.
Do you remember years ago that State Farm was like, because a lot of hurricanes had come through, they were like, it's a little too expensive now. So we're just going to offer car insurance, but we're not going to no longer have homeowners insurance. And people lost their minds. And then the state got involved and said, you can't have you can't do both. You can't have that. Either you're going to have
your cake and eat it too. You got
you got to do both, because some people had a bundled package and stuff. They're like, if you drop our homeowners insurance, then we want the bundle, and forget it. So the state got involved and said, you got to do both. Hit the like button or Jerome Powell will sell your information to an extended warranty people. Thanks, Lawnmower. Thanks. Make sure you ask your questions too. I'm a little concerned for what's going to happen in the future. I do think that by the end of the year, we're going to be in the 7s as far as interest rates. That's my crystal ball opinion, because he seems pretty amped to make people suffer for a while. He wants the numbers to be bad. Liberty Lover says, we finally got our house ready to sell a couple months ago, right after the Fed raising rates, of course. Should I leave it on the market, remove it, or relist it in May? If you're, Ken, you can give your opinion. If you're asking me, I would sell that sucker now. I don't know how long. I don't know how. I think they're going to just continue to sell up interest rates, and I don't think that, because they're going to get the money one way or the other. So you're either going to pay more money for a house, or you're going to pay more money for an interest rate. If it's me, I want to pay more money for the house and not an interest rate, because I want to pay over years and years and years to the lender. I would want to, if you have to get rid of it now, get rid of it now. Sucks. Totally sucks, but I would get rid of it. That would be me. What's your opinion?
I think it comes down to the motivation. If I'm having this conversation on a daily basis with my clients, and it's just like, if your motivation is, I want to upsize, or I want, I just don't like my house, I wish things were different, I would probably just hang on to your house. If you're getting relocated from Florida to Texas, well, then you need to sell as fast as you can. Get on the market, don't wait for the spring. So it really comes down to your motivation and why that is. Like, we were getting ready to buy a house, like my wife and I was like, you know what, I think that things are going to get a little creepy here. Like, let's just hang on to what we have, and we'll just fix some other things we want to do with the house. And I think that story is going to happen more and more and more, where people just decide not to sell. But yeah, I think now is the time. And I think the next 2 or 3 years is going to be not as good as it would be today. Yeah.
I'd get rid of it. Yeah, if you ask me, I'm going to get rid of it. Get rid of it. I don't know. I'm afraid, like, by spring. Yeah. But I'm just thinking by spring, if interest rates are like, unless I'm being crazy right now, at 8, 9, 10%. Oops. Sorry. Can you hear that?
I can't.
Oh, there's like music in my ears. I'm trying to turn it off. I'm so sorry. It's like, it's saying testing your speakers by StreamYard. It's
no.
That was weird. I hit a button and that made that go off.
StreamYard's funny.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. That was uncomfortable silence. don't even remember what we were talking about. Anyways, if I was to sell, I'd sell now, because the only thing I could think of is that if in my imagination, if the interest rates are at 8, 9, 10% by spring, and I'm really like I'm being doom and gloom. I mean, no, that's going to be a hard time to find somebody that's willing to buy your house at
Sure.
that interest rate. So how much equity you're going to lose? And that's like their whole thing is they want to peel back your equity. That's what they're trying to do. It's too many houses, too much equity, and not affordable for everybody. Instead of making more houses, they're going to take it one way or the other. Somebody's going to be paying.
Yeah. And I feel like, we're going to go back to where it's more motivated moves than anything. You're moving for a job. You're moving because you had a baby. You guys got married. Like I was looking at it before we came on today, and I mean, we're still even in the peak of, and I call the peak 90 days ago of like where we were at. We were selling roughly 1,150 homes every week here in Orlando. We're still selling over 1,000 every week. So the number of units have pulled down maybe 10%, but that's still 1,000 sales every single week. Like our market's still fairly hot. It's not like all doom and gloom, but it does feel like we're on the precipice of something not awesome.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. And honestly, I've been very positive about the housing market. All these headlines, like it's all crashing, it's all coming down. I'm like, it's balancing out. I kept saying we're going to be hitting the great stagnation for quite some time. That's if the Fed didn't do what it did and what it's planning to do with the housing market. I said we were going to stay stagnant for a very, very long time. When I saw that he specifically addressed housing and where he was like, reset it, but I don't have a specific number. He wants to take it. He wants to take it. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to listen to him because he talks very slow and he's very dry, there's actually a whole transcript of what he said online. You just type in Jerome Powell speech and it will bring it up and bring you a PDF and you can download it. Question: what is your prediction on mortgage interest rates over the next few weeks? Will they plummet for a bit like last month or keep going up? Sorry if this was answered already. It has not been answered. What is your opinion, my friend Ken Pozek?
So as soon as I saw Jerome JP get up there and say what he said, I started texting my mortgage friends, and they kind of assumed that this would happen as well, because you're talking about the difference between long-term and short-term debt. And so 75 basis points mostly on short-term debt doesn't always affect mortgages exactly in lockstep like everything else. So most of them said that we would see like a week, maybe reprieve, quick pullback, but then it's going to be probably 7% over the next 30 to 60 days. High sixes for sure.
I concur. Not that I'm like a mortgage person, but
no, me either. Yeah, that's just grabbing their information that they're the guys that know much more than you or I. That's what they're predicting.
Yeah, I talked to there's a mortgage guy that I have here, and he pretty much was saying the same exact thing. But I had met with him before about a month ago because I had CE credit and he was there. So he had said like, oh, I think we're going to remain flat. I'm like, yeah, the great stagnation. He was like, that's a great term, Smallhorn. He was like, yep, we're going to be remaining flat. And then so when I asked him about this, he's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm staying positive. Don't get me wrong. There's always going to be deals to be made, but this is going to look a little bit different than we've seen in years before. A little different.
Exactly right.
Jerry says, wait, I've heard the jobs market is great. What all this about not having a job? Okay. The jobs market numbers have been coming out and they have been very, very good. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they are wanting to remove 1.3 million jobs or 1.2 million jobs. That's what Jerome Powell said in his meeting. So he can stabilize home prices. That's his plan. We're just going to make people out of work, so they have to drop prices in housing. It's been unsustainable. So this is what we're going to do. The non-farm unemployment rate increased by 315,000 in August, and the unemployment rate rose to 3.7%. The U.S. Bureau of Statistics reported today. Oh, this was in August. Notable job gains occurred in professional and business services, healthcare, and related retail trade. Of course, they're going to go in there because so many people lost it during the pandemonium. Yep. But I don't know what jobs he's wanting. necessarily just totally remove from the market. Like who's he wanting to lose? Yeah, who's he wanting to just be broke? I don't know.
I think so. I dropped a link there. I was reading on CNN and they were talking about on their take on what's going on, and it was like, hey, if we make things. No, I don't actually. That's actually the first time that's ever come out of my mouth in a very long time. But their whole thing is if they make money so expensive that jobs can't afford to grow and or invest back in their people, then they're going to have to lay off people. And if that's the case, then that's going to be across all job sectors of like, which makes sense to me. Like I would love to go hire another 3, 4, 5 people for my company, but I have to start making some decisions on like, I'm either going to keep my current people, pay them well, or I'm going to go hire people. Right. And eventually these people might not be able to afford where they're living. And so they're going to go look for more money elsewhere. Right. And so then you have to make some decisions. So that makes sense to me. If inflationary is still kind of crazy and money is so expensive to borrow, then you're not going to go hire people. And because of that, maybe you lose some jobs. That's their take anyways.
I think that the home equity line of credit is going to be more difficult to get, by the way, because of if the home prices start pulling back, people start losing their jobs, banks are going to get wise to that. And they weren't really too wise to it the last time. And people were getting these home equity lines of credit to pay other debts and they were using it as an ATM machine instead of being smart. I think the restrictions for HELOCs are going to be really tight if you can get one at all.
Wildly enough, I just applied for one this week. Not because I need the money, because I'm thinking that I might need the money if there's good deals to be had. So for me, I'm like, how can I get as much cash as possible set aside for should the market pull back 30%? And if it does, then there's going to be great opportunities. So
the Fed's fight against inflation could cost 1.2 million jobs. The other analysis said it was closer to 1.3. Yeah. I actually have that as a clip in one of my videos that's coming out on Tuesday.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Was that the article you were talking about on CNN?
Yeah.
Oh, you're just reading it. You weren't actually watching it.
No, yeah, I was just reading that. That was their.
Okay, that's different. That's a different thing.
I was reading that link right there. No, I don't watch. Yeah, no, I'm not on the CNN. I was just reading their business.
I was gonna say, I'm like, who watches it anymore? I'll read their articles. I'll read them, but I'm not gonna sit there and listen to them flap their lips.
It's all very, very cancerous. I feel like, news these days. That's why people watch you, because it's like good commentary. Nothing crazy. So
yeah, well, people give me guff though. Eddie, you can go ahead and put the question on the screen. Jerry Prusa is like the questionologist today. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you. We're not only the ones in the housing market downturn. We're not the only ones in the housing market downturn, but where did it start? Bright spot. Who will be first out? Who will be the first out in this housing market, do you think?
The first out? I guess I don't understand the question.
You remember last time it was like the housing flippers were out first, you know?
Like the iBuyers were out first. They're like, Zillow offers, like OfferPad, Open Door, like Wall Street was the first to leave. They're all, I don't know of any iBuyers right now that are still buying. I think OfferPad has a buy box that's tiny right now. But yeah, I think you're going to have a lot of mom and pop investors pulling out as well, because they're going to be freaking out. Access to money, access to capital with the tumultuous market. I don't see people racing back in to invest right now.
Well, this is what I think the big investors are going to do. They're just like, okay, well, the Fed, like they said, well, the Fed's doing what the Fed's going to do. We're going to just hold on to all this capital that we're wanting to invest in the housing market and see how far it goes, and then reinvest all over again. They're not. Yeah. They're not going to lose. They're not going to drop the houses that they're using for rentals, because they are so good. They have made so much money on their REITs and everything else. They have had great returns with those rental properties, and they're not going to get rid of them. They're not going to get rid of them.
Nope.
So, Eddie, next question. Eddie's the producer in the background. He's also my husband, the main squeeze. The main squeeze. If my hair looks a little weird to everybody, it's because I accidentally put athlete foot spray in my hair instead of dry shampoo. Yeah. I'll be washing my hair after this. Question: Doesn't almost every area have some type of expensive needed insurance. Coastal states have hurricanes. West Coast has earthquakes. The tornado belt. The South Dakota has its hail. Yeah, like I mean, I think the most safe state, I think it might be Vermont. I think I could be completely wrong when it comes to weather, but it's like I don't, in Louisiana we have it all except for snow, and if we do get snow, it's bad, but we have it all: hail, tornadoes, hurricanes. I had a tornado hit my house while I was in it when we
Are
lived
you
here.
serious?
So yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
True story. Just knew it was coming. Put my dog's computers in a closet and just sat there. And it was as quickly as I got everybody in there, it ended just as fast. And it was so
Oh my
fast,
gosh.
it made so much damage. But we were lucky. I didn't get hurt or anything. So
This is
yeah.
so I looked, now I'm massively curious. So what's the cheapest state for home insurance according to insurance.com? It's Hawaii. The least expensive state for home insurance, $582.
I bet
Everything else is crazy expensive.
I was gonna say that, but the home cost $8.9 million for a
Yeah.
3-bedroom, 2-bath
Milk
house.
is $10 a gallon, but yeah, everything else is
Yeah, because everything's imported. That was the one thing,
exactly.
like, I was a teenager and stupid, and I'm like, well, back in the States, and they're like, we're part of the United States, and I was like, oh, couldn't get it out of my head. I'm like, yeah, you're part of the United States, you know. But just even getting a soda, this was back in 1992. Just getting a Coke was $2.50. $2.
Crazy.
Yeah. So the comment section is apparently really popping. People are laughing at like Crow Homestead. I wish I could read it all as I'm doing this live stream. I can't. And he's going to put up the next question. CR has a question. Given the circumstances of a worst case scenario for new home builds, how far below sticker price should the first offer be? Use the Orlando market as an example, Ken Pozek.
Given the circumstances for a worst case scenario for new builds, how far should sticker price? So if you're talking about a new build construction, I mean, builders are giving crazy incentives right now off of lot premiums, design incentives, all that kind of stuff. And they're pretty upfront about it. I've been able to push a little bit over what they're offering right now. But given like 6 months ago, you had to pay a crazy premium and all this other stuff. Today, you're getting $25,000 or so for the average Orlando home in design incentives, plus typically $10,000 to $30,000 off lot premium. Plus, some of them are offering crazy interest rate incentives where they'll buy down your rate at closing. So I think that's the most smart thing to do for them anyways, because instead of giving me $10,000 towards the design center, buy my rate down to the 4s or the 5s. And now people are excited and they'll lock it in for the next year. So regardless of where you're at. And so that gives you a good opportunity, I think. In terms of
buy
resale,
the points.
Yeah, buy the points. Why not? For resale, on average, things are selling in Orlando anywhere still like 98% of the time, or 98% of the list price. So not like crazy low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it was me and they were saying, oh, you can get new curtains and a new like upgraded package of the refrigerator and the stove, don't blow all of that off and say, no, buy down my rate, buy down my interest rate.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't want to be paying the bank more than the house is worth. Like
Exactly.
I would not want to be paying the whatever 6.7% interest rate when they can get it down to like what, 4 or 5. I would rather that.
Right.
Much rather that.
Yeah.
Over the life alone, 30 years. That's a lot. Oh, I don't know if anybody I have to ask you this. Did you ever use the quote, marry the house, but date the rate? Did you ever use that quote?
I never did. I saw it going around Facebook too much. So I was like, I just feel like I don't want to be one of those people.
I didn't like it. And I still don't like it. I think it's terrible to say because that's hoping that the interest rates will go back down at some point, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And how long?
I feel like
how long is that going to be? You know?
Yeah, yeah. You know, you should go in with the understanding that you might have to keep this rate forever, and then if it drops and you get lucky, now you've got found money. That's the way I look at it.
I told him. I said it's a sleazy salesperson thing to say. Don't.
Agreed.
And like, well, I can barely afford this house, but they say maybe I can refinance in a couple of years. So we'll have to like keep our belts tightened until then, in a couple of years, who knows, it could be at 15%. I'm not saying that. That's not a great prediction. I'm just saying, you know, and then you're really hurting because the interest rates on your house are like would be so much higher. Not only that, let's just say inflation is still a problem, and you can't afford the gas, and you can't afford food, and now you barely can afford your house, and you can't
Right.
refinance. I mean, that was just dumb.
No, thank you.
Christina, only the sevens. What about the height of the Carter years? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 18%.
Yeah, I think my parents bought a house in the 70s, and I think it was 18.2% or something like that. It was crazy. Yeah, 16.63. I guess I was wrong. Yeah, it was right at 70. That was the year 72. Yep. They bought it really high, really, really high. It was up there. No, 77 was 8.85. It's crazy. Maybe it was 13%. Maybe that's why I thought 18. It was 13. But then, like, yeah, there it is. 13.74. I don't want to see that again. It's going to really, but I don't know if I didn't even know about this because I wasn't like around during that time, but someone was asking me about assuming somebody else's mortgage. Do you know anything about that?
I do. So like banks pretty much took that away through the last recession. So if you read a lot of your mortgage docs at closing, it'll say like, is this loan assumable? And the great majority of them say no. I do think that VA, for some reason in my mind, VA was allowed to, but they have to requalify. There's a whole bunch of stuff around that. So if you can find a VA to assume their mortgage, that's a big selling point for sure. But yeah, for the majority of conventional mortgages, they're not going to be.
Right. But like that is true. If you have a VA loan and you are a veteran and you're looking at that home, like you can do that. You can assume the mortgage. I don't know. I've never actually did a deal that was an assumed mortgage. I just know it's a possibility. So don't ask me questions about it. Ask Trevor Smith. He's another YouTuber. If you're thinking about assuming somebody else's mortgage and all that, and ask him how that works. That is not something I'm familiar with. I just knew it was a thing, and it's still a thing with the VA.
Yeah. Do you know the story about Paul Volcker? It was like Carter's Fed chair. So Jerome Powell back in the 80s. Do you know the story about him coming in?
No.
So Carter was like, hey, so we've got this, he becomes president, and he says, he starts interviewing people to become the new Fed chair. And he says, Paul said he went and interviewed and said, hey, you know what I would do? I would raise rates to like 18, 20%. And then he's like, that would fix it all. It would be a disaster for a year or two, but it would fix everything. And he went home and he told his wife, there's no way I'm getting this job. And the next day he gets the job, and he says, great, you're going to come in and do what you're going to do. And so basically he was the only one at the time that was like willing to have the hard conversation of how do we temper inflation, right? I just feel like I wish I had a little bit more confidence in JP, that he would be knowing the route to take other than just like hire. I don't know. It's interesting. I want more confidence in our leadership. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I don't like what he says. Well, I mean, when I said reset, I didn't have a specific number in mind. What? That quote, because he's like, he kept doing that. I'm like, what, dude?
Get it together, bro.
Like my daughter always says, bro. She always does that. Yeah. Somebody says you can have Liz Truss. No, thank you. Christina says no.
Good.
I'm not into UK politics, but Christina says no. FHA is assumable. Is still possible. I'm not a mortgage person. I know for a fact that VA is still assumable. I'm not sure if FHA is. That I would be lying if I'd be lying. I'll talk to a lender. Why don't you know this, Ken? You're supposed to be smart.
Well, I'm on this HUD website, so I was looking up HUD, and HUD's website says that all FHA insured mortgages are assumable. So that's anything. That's HUD.gov. I'll drop it in the link for you.
All right. Sterling Michaels, thank you so much. Woo, you're smart for asking such a good question because I didn't know the answer to it. I just knew that VA was. D says, question, will a cash offer get a better deal in a regular market, HUD, home store, or foreclosure market, or not at all? Are you like for HUD home store? What would get you the bid is that you were buying it for yourself and you're not an investor. They put the individual buyer first. If you're an investor, you got to wait until it's been sitting on the market for a hot minute before they ever will let you even entertain purchasing their homes. Back during the last uh, um, crash that we had, the housing crash that we had, they still did that. They still waited 14 days for somebody to, like make an individual buyer buy the house before they talk to investors. And they kind of dragged their feet the whole time, like they would drag their feet. Unlike if they were buying it as a person that like a couple that was going to be moving into the house, they seem to
Mhm.
move a lot faster. They required a lot more documents if you're an investor. So yeah, HUD Home Store, cash doesn't matter as long as you're buying it for yourself. But anytime that you have cash offers, they always win a deal, especially on investment properties. They always do.
Yep.
What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, all deals turn to cash after 30 days, so it depends on the seller's motivation. But yeah, if it's an investment property and people are just like, "Hey, I need to close as quick as possible," obviously cash is going to win. And for the most part, just one less contingency. Why not?
Oh, look, here we go. All FHA insured mortgages are assumable. Mortgages originated before December 1st, 1989 generally contain no restrictions on assumability, while the originated after that date have some certain restrictions depending on the date and the loan origination. The lender may require a credit worthiness review of the assumptor. That's not a word I use every day. To determine what restrictions have been placed on the mortgage. The lender must review the mortgage and legal documents. Yeah. Well, I learned something new today. I've honestly have never done one.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
this is what my
for
fourth.
the past 10, 15 years, like we haven't had to, right? And now it might be the thing.
So, like, if I got my license in 2007 here in Louisiana, how many years is that? Is that 15 years? I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just never have done it. It's not one of those things. Yeah. But yeah, if you have cash, cash is always king, but don't be silly. Like I had this one investor years ago that was like, I want to make an offer on this house for 60,000. It was listed for 120. And I'm like, you're not going to win the house. He's like, but I have
But I'm
cash.
cash.
But I have cash. I'm like, your cash at 60,000 means nothing to them when the guy who's getting a loan is offering them 110,000. Well,
Yep.
I'm cash. I can close faster. I'm like, they're not desperate. They're not
Yeah.
desperate. They don't need your 60,000. And then a lot of times too, even with short sales, people got crazy. Like they're like, but it's a short sale. I'm like, yeah, but the bank isn't going to take $150,000 off the purchase price when the house is worth
They're still gonna do an
250,000.
appraisal. Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
nailed it.
like, oh, it's an education process, and some people get really like, I don't know, they get arrogant, I guess. I don't even know what the word is when you have cash. All right. Question, on my first out
Oh,
comment. Oh, Jerry,
mhm.
here we go. First out comment. I guess what I was saying is that the US would be the first out of the downturn. Point being, US leads in a lot of economic issues. So where you think we're going to be the first ones out? Well, they kind of like all these. They kind of follow what we do, don't they? A lot of the other countries, they follow what we're doing with our economy, and they're going, "Oh, they're pretty smart over there. I think I'll do
Yeah,
it."
I
What do
feel
you
like
think?
US dollar is still, for the time being anyways, the dollar that's supreme, and I feel like our economy sets the tone for so much of the rest of the world. So, that's a great question, though. I'm gonna dive into more. That's something I wanna know more of.
Um, Canada was the first one to make the big hit to the housing market, though. I have to tell you, Canada, like for years, has had like ridiculous gains in price, like historic price increases for housing to the point where like they were making laws that if you left the house vacant, you had to pay a fine, and you could
Mhm.
like crazy stuff just to kind of like even it out. So maybe this is their way of evening it out.
Yeah, for a while, the Bank of Canada did a really good job tempering, runaway inflation, runaway pricing, and then all of a sudden, yeah, they allowed investors in, which so all of BC and Toronto went crazy, and then you're right, they started adding on vacancy tax and all that kind of stuff to try to get it under control. Now they're just doing the same thing that we're doing, which is just raising interest rates.
So maybe Canada was the first.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, so that there's your answer to your question, Jerry. Canada. Canada
Yeah.
might be the first one out. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Eddie's going to put up the next question. But I'm just really interested to see what happens by the end of the year. I still say we're going to be in the sevens as far as interest rates, maybe even high sevens. I don't know. He just seems very gung-ho of raising those rates. Outside of Orlando, I see a lot of new developments. Does that make the closer to Orlando more expensive? It would be the
Yeah, I mean,
opposite,
so
right?
yeah, it's kind of the opposite. So the closer in you are into the city of Orlando, the more expensive things are. And so the farther out you get a lot more new construction because it's, farmland and orange groves that have been turned into new development. And so you have a little bit more opportunity for a more reasonably priced home that's new construction. Usually, though, they're much smaller lots and they're much, that kind of thing. So there's a trade-off. You need to be willing to drive because most of the jobs are in the city hubs and over by the airport and down in the theme park areas. And so, yeah, the closer you are to the city, the more expensive stuff is.
I lived in Lake County, and that I can concur that there's lots of orange groves out in that area. But
Right.
but the thing is it is a trade-off, because once that country area hits, there isn't, you only get 3 grocery stores. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird. There's all of a sudden it's Orlando, then a big gap of just nothing, and then you have these rural towns that start up. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
So
couldn't
for the
get
past
into
5
Lake County
years,
again.
yeah. Well, I'm telling you, not that you have any reason to come here other than maybe to see me, but the Orlando it's sprawling, right? We've had over 1,000 people moving to Central Florida every week for the past 7 years. So all of a sudden, those big gaps in between the rural towns are getting smaller and smaller. So it's cool to see. I love to see what we're doing here.
When I moved there, people would be like, "You live in Apopka?" Now Apopka is a normal part of Orlando.
Yeah,
It used to
totally.
be
Yeah.
that used to be the rural area, and then it was,
Oh, really?
but yeah, that
Yeah,
was
that was
Apopka was a rural area, but then
it was the
it
greenhouse capital of the country or something like that at one point. There's greenhouses everywhere, which is kind of wild.
yeah, but then it became embedded in part of the city,
Hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
it went from rural to being a part of the city, and now it's
Yep.
booming metropolis. All
Yep.
right, Eddie's gonna put up the next question. How hard is it to find a duplex to Airbnb, depending on where you live? Is it hard in Orlando to find a duplex to Airbnb?
That you can Airbnb, yeah, for sure. I mean, the city of Orlando doesn't allow Airbnbs, so unless you're living in 2/3 of the house, which is a very weird thing. But you can Airbnb out your ADU or your garage apartment or whatever. But yeah, like a duplex, you can't Airbnb, so it's tough to find here. Anyways, what about where you're at?
You can't Airbnb here.
No, okay.
No, that's the only place that I would ever Airbnb is either right by LSU,
Yeah.
That would be it. But that's hard to find a house around there, honestly, because anytime a house goes up for sale, someone's either buying it for their kid for college, or
Yep.
it's pretty expensive. But down the other place would have been New Orleans, but they stopped that. The hotels did a bunch of lobbying to stop Airbnb businesses, and there were a bunch of high-rise condominiums starting, and most of the people that invest in that were looking to make an Airbnb, and when they
Yeah.
stopped it, those buildings just completely stopped altogether.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yep.
Wild.
But that's what happens when you get the power of hotels behind you.
That's why I'm sort of surprised that Disney and Universal here haven't gotten behind it to stop it more, but they haven't.
I guess I guess they feel like it's needed. There just isn't enough. I'm going to answer this question really quick. It says,
Yeah.
what are your sources you're getting your data from? I get them from the National Association of Realtors. I also get it from Black Knight Analytics, and I also get it from the National Home Builders Association. That's who I get my data from. That's the only data I'll quote. Oh, and then I'll go on Fred as well. I'll get some charts from Fred, but I don't if it's from a blog post or just a random guy that's saying some stuff. No, I'm not doing that. And then I don't add anything to my data or anything. I'll tell you what I think, but I'm not going to make up anything. So that's where I get my stuff. Where do you get your stuff?
Just exactly what you mentioned. I mean, we do a lot of permitting data, and on our channel, we talk a lot about what's coming. So a lot of county level, state level, or organizational level, like National Association of Realtors or Fred or something like that. All the stuff you just talked about. If I'm talking facts, I'm going to find it somebody that's their job is to produce facts.
Yeah. Yeah. I throw my opinion in there. I'll be like, this is how my opinion. This is
Yeah,
what
no,
I
and
think.
that's the
I
big
can't help
difference, right?
myself.
That's between, yeah, that's why, like, that's CNN. Yeah, the difference between opinion and fact, they shouldn't be muddled, but sometimes they might
Yeah,
be.
the lines have been very blurred in the last, I don't know, 6 years.
I agree.
And people are trying to sell something. So a
Mhm.
lot of the headlines too aren't reflective. Like the past year talking about the housing market, I honestly believe some of that created some of the panic,
Yeah.
Um, the
And
panic
even
with
what's going on right
buying.
now, they're
Yeah, it's again panic. So it's going to they're going to create panic buying, which they did, and then they created now they're going to end up creating panic selling. But if that's what you need to do, like I still maintain this, and I will if if it works the way that he wants it to work, and we lose 1.3 million jobs or 1.2 million jobs, then that's yeah. Yeah, and where I'm getting that data from is straight from Jerome Powell's mouth.
right.
That is not my data point, that's his. Home equity loans are drying up, new mortgages are slowing up. Oh, Eddie, where'd that go, man? Where'd you go? Eddie took that off. Eddie must be drinking too much coffee today. Charles says, home equity loans are drying up. New mortgages are slowing up. Aren't the mortgage folks worried about their jobs? They have been losing their jobs
Like
since
crazy.
what for the last 6 years?
Yeah,
I'm gonna put
yeah.
I'm gonna
Go
put
ahead,
my little spin on this too.
please.
Some of the places that have lost their jobs is because they've made a humongous sector in the refinance market. So of course, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, they like really made this whole section of people of just refinancing mortgages. Well, when you see interest rates go up as high as they do, there's a lot less people that are willing to refinance their home. They're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Not at that rate. Why would I do that? You know, that's why these people are losing their jobs, because there isn't as much demand for mortgage refinancing. It isn't just the fact that people are writing up homes, brand new houses or new resale houses. There's a whole refinance market. And I think that's where they put too much eggs in that specific basket. So they had no choice but to lay off people from it. What do you
Yeah.
say, my friend?
No, you nailed it. I mean, I feel like, better.com, like a lot of the online bankers like Rocket Homes and all these other places, they're laying off literally half of their staff immediately because half of their business was refinances, and those are completely gone. So that you've got loan officers, you've got processors, you've got appraisers, you've got title people, you've got a lot of people that it affects. And honestly, maybe that's where the jobs are coming from. The job loss, Kristina, like we were just talking about, like what sectors is this going to affect? But if you keep going down that road, the financial services sector is massive in our country. And so all of a sudden, if you don't have the demand and those products disappear, well, those people don't have jobs. So there's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, and I kind of, I'm on two sides on this, because homes have been so incredibly unaffordable, and it was ridiculous. I saw so many people that were like, I just want to find a place to live. Like, I can't
Yeah.
find a place to live. This is ridiculous. This house down next to my grandma is now $400,000. Like, this is insanity. I just want to buy that house. I can't buy it now. But
Yeah.
then we're on another part of it. Like, I look at the sellers and they're like, I bought my house in 2019. You're going to tell me that like I could possibly lose every bit of equity I ever had in it? And I always have to explain to them, okay, well, let's just think about this. Did you really lose it, or unless you're selling it? If you're not selling it, you didn't lose the equity. But
Yeah.
if you have to sell it, that's when it's kind of going to suck.
Yeah. I've been using this, do you play blackjack at all? Do you ever go to the casino? Hit up the
No, I don't
tables?
like gambler.
All right. So I every once in a while hit the blackjack table, and if you're up $1,000 and then you give back the house 200 and you cash out and you take 800, you still won 800, right?
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of sellers are like, I quote lost the money. Like, did you really lose it? Like, you only make or lose the money when you cash out. And so
Mhm.
that's something to keep really clear in, I think, a lot of people's mind.
Yeah, that happened the last time too. People are like, I lost $30,000 on this house. I'm like, oh, wait a minute though. I'm looking at you didn't really lose $30,000
You're walking
on
away
your
with
house.
check. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. It says, Anna Gray has a question. When do you think the housing market will crash? Or Or do you think that it will at all? What is your opinion? Do you think it's going to crash?
Again, I think going back to the term crash, do I think it's going to go down 35%? I don't. Do I think that it could pull back 10, 15? Sure, for sure. And I think that, the crystal ball, and both of us, we don't have one, but I think that it's going to be, it went up super fast. I think it's going to go down super fast. I just think that that's, we went up in Orlando, we went up 20% last year. That's very fast. And I don't think people realize that you can lose it as fast as you gained it. So yeah, that's my opinion.
It's going to take a while before we really see like substantial reductions in home prices. I mean, it's even Mr. Powell said that. Even good old Jerome said that it's going to take a while, because even if somebody was to lose their job tomorrow, and then they couldn't pay their mortgage, that whole process of getting them out of their house takes time. It isn't something that happens overnight. Just because they didn't pay their mortgage this month or next month or the month after that, they still have to go through a whole court process of having that foreclosure done on their home. And sometimes it can take a year, 2 years, 3 years before anybody's actually physically removed from the house. And then, then that house is going to be able to put on the market. The foreclosure process is not quick. It's not easy. Most likely, if somebody loses their job, they're going to try to sell their house on their own. And I'm hoping in most cases they have enough equity in that home that they don't have to do a short sale or go through the foreclosure process. But there's always some stubborn guy out there or girl out there. They'll be like, no, I want to sell it for this amount of money. That's it. And then it sits on the market forever. They're like, that's what the neighbor got. And like, you're going to lose your house. Well, I haven't paid, but I'm trying. I'm working with the mortgage company. I'm like, yeah. So, and sure enough, then it ends up being in a short sale, and it's way lower than it would have been if they had listened to me 6 months earlier, and they could have gotten the price that they wanted to get. So
yeah, agreed.
If you're in that situation, listen to a licensed professional that understands the market and what's happening. And if you don't like what they have to say, call 3 others to see what they have to say, and then follow them with that. Night Owl 808. It says, after inflation is tampered down with interest, with the rate increase, what do you think would be the trigger event for rates to begin dropping again? What would you think would be the trigger event that make interest rates drop again?
I think it comes back down to inflation. So if they're saying that the reason that they're raising rates the way that they are is because of inflation, then inflation actually getting tempered, actually coming down, that would cause them to pull back rates. But right now, so far, the rates that they've been raising have not been affecting inflation at all. It just continues to rage on.
It even surprised them, he said. People keep spending like they got the money. But you don't have a choice, like you have to go to work. You have to buy gas. You have to buy groceries. There's things you have to purchase. So I don't know. Here we go. What about Airbnb and triplex? Can you be more specific about that question? What about Airbnb and triplex? I think they're like, if you're an investor and you have cash, this would be the time I'd be sitting back and relaxing and just seeing what things do before I wouldn't be buying anything right now. If I was an investor, I'd just be waiting, especially after what was said on Wednesday. Just hang back, watch what's going on. Unless you have to get a house. Do you see Blackstone's 50 billion housing ETF popping the market up? Do you see Blackstone's 50 billion housing ETF propping up the market way up? I don't know what that is. I haven't looked at Blackstone's. Go ahead, explain.
So, I mean, Blackstone, they've got their ETF where they own, I think, $1 trillion worth of real estate, all over, right? But if he's talking about their ETF that's specifically in the residential side, yeah, I think that's part of the reason why. There we go. Vehicle to scoop up real estate bargains during the downturn. Here's to lock up. Yeah.
Then what did I say? Investors are just waiting. They're going to wait it out. They stopped. I guess I just didn't understand what they were saying. But I've always said that Blackstone, that's what they did the last time. They learned something in the last housing market where they knew that they could buy up a lot of homes inexpensively, and they're like, this is great return on investment. So
Yep.
they were, when the housing market was going up like that, they also had learned that they could make a lot of money from the rental market instead of flipping it, because that's what they
Yeah.
were doing for a while, was flipping it. And they're like, forget that, let's rent it, and we could have a long-term uh investment for a while. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
just do that. And that's what they did. So they invest. Blackstone isn't the rental company. You're not renting your house from Blackstone. Blackstone invests in the companies that do, though, like Icon Homes. I think it is Tricon Homes. They invest with them, and Invitation Homes, and they just
Invitation homes. Yeah.
invest. Yeah, they just go ahead and just invest with them because they know exactly what they're doing. And then there's a rent to buy home thing too, which that would make me nervous right now if you were doing a rent to own situation with some of these, like Buy America
Yeah.
thing. That would make me very nervous right
Yeah,
now.
because eventually you're gonna have to turn around and buy it for the price that you agreed on. And if the prices are going down, you don't want to lock in a price that is going to be your house is going to be less. You're going to be worth less, right? So you're paying a down payment plus your monthly payment, and then 2 years you look up and you need to cash out or close, and you can't. That's a tough problem to be in.
Yeah, and I believe they keep your down, like all that money that you've
Yeah,
put
yeah, it's
down.
just
They
gone.
keep it if you don't buy the house. They keep it.
Agreed.
Ooh, that'd be gross. That'd be gross. And here in Louisiana, there isn't such a thing as like rent to own. It doesn't exist. We have something that's a little bit different, and it's required of you to put down a healthy down payment. So it's called a lease purchase, and you would basically rent the house, but in order to hold it, and you're paying that monthly rent, you have to put down like $10,000. And if you do not, you satisfy that, the owner gets the whole $10,000 or whatever the amount is, whatever you
Sure.
agree on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one here that was like $45,000 on a house that was like, at the time, I think it was 400,000. And then we were like, oh, that's great. Let them do it. They trashed it. And all $45,000 was put right back in the house that they trashed. I mean, it was fully furnished and everything. They ruined it.
Jeez.
Anyways, flight simulation experience. Question: if purchasing power drops 10% per 1% increase, why haven't we seen more of a drop? Average buyer purchasing power has dropped 40% since 3% rates. I don't know.
I think part of it had to be that we just didn't have the supply in order to keep up with the amount of buyers. So yes, there's a lot of buyers that now cannot afford it, but it's not going to be in lockstep, because for every listing I took, I had 15 to 20 offers. That means that there was 19 buyers who missed out. Now, the amount of buyers that are left over, there might be one or two that can still afford it, that still want to move forward. So it's not in lockstep with affordability in terms of what housing is going to do. It has to do with supply and demand. And so the fact that supply is still not rampant, like where you have crazy foreclosures and crazy amount of listings hitting the market, that's what's keeping prices fairly flat. We haven't seen a pullback at all. We've actually still seen week after week, I get the reports from our MLS, and we're still like going up slightly, but we're still going up, which is a very weird thing.
The median home price for the first time just dropped for the first time last month.
Nationwide?
Nationwide.
Yeah.
Nationally. But that was bound to happen, and it wasn't significant. But I mean, I was kind of like, every week I'd be like, is it now? And has it gone up? Is it now? Is it coming down? And every month it would be like, we're still going up. I'm like, this is crazy. It's crazy. But we just don't. And people say we don't have a housing shortage, but we do have a housing shortage of affordable homes. That's the biggest problem. We don't have enough affordable homes anywhere in pretty much every single market. Question: does renting a master bedroom for $1,000 a month for Orlando sound like too much?
A master bedroom for $1,000 a month? Yeah, it does. I mean, it depends on the area of Orlando. You're talking about Winter Park, which is super high end real estate, maybe not. But if you're talking about a bedroom, sounds like an Airbnb situation, that seems like it would be a little high. I don't do buy the bedroom often, so or really ever. I'm just more like the whole house. So just thinking about dollars per bedroom there, it seems a little high.
Well, I mean, like this was a thing that people were doing is like house hacking, like,
Yeah.
okay, I can't afford the whole house, but I could rent the room. So I'll just go ahead and buy the house and rent out a couple rooms. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, average rent in Orlando is now like $2,200, which is kind of wild. I don't know what it was when you lived here, but it's wild. See how fast it's gone up.
my first apartment, I think you can correct me on this, but I think we paid $575 a month.
What?
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta remember this was 2000, not even, no, it was 1999.
Oh my gosh.
1999. It was in Castleberry, not in the best place, and it was
Not the
tax
best
credit
place.
housing.
Oh,
It was
heck yeah.
tax credit housing. Yeah, well, we were just newly married,
Yeah,
It
of
was
course. You got to do what you got to do.
yeah, so and I drove a Geo Metro, and Eddie drove a, possessed, Geo as well with a that had a sunroof that leaked,
I
and the
lo-
the automatic locks would go and lock and unlock all day long. I'm like, "Someone's gonna steal this car." He's like, "Thank God."
Yeah.
Like, get
Yeah.
rid of it. Question, if the Fed is late on inflation, will it be late on deflation as well to correct it?
I don't have a ton of trust in our federal government that they're on top of anything, and so I think they're playing catch up on inflation right now. And will they see deflation and react quickly? Probably not.
I mean, he doesn't have an arbitrary number stuck in his head that he wants
Yeah.
housing to be at. I don't have when I said reset, I wasn't really necessarily thinking of a specific number.
Didn't
I
really know
was
what I was
a
talking
data
about, but
point or whatever he said. Like,
right,
oh my
right.
God. This is just so
Crazy.
crazy. Yep. Kevin said, do you think that cities and counties will rezone single family areas to multi-dwellings instead of rolling back property taxes for home owner relief and mortgage defaults? Can I go
Yeah,
first
please. I
on
don't
this
have an
one?
answer.
Okay, so I don't know, like, also in that conversation, he talked about that they were going, and they've been saying this, they're working with more states about rezoning areas that were like zone commercial, for instance, to rezone them back to residential. How that'll affect a property taxes, who knows? Who knows? That was another thing that I thought about too when we were talking about this, is that some areas do not have homestead. And if your property went up, like, I don't know, let's just say, 35, 40%, and you're on a fixed income, you've lived in your area for so long and you hadn't budgeted for that, and then your tax bill comes in, like our area has, it can't go up X amount of percentage, but some areas do not have that. That could be a problem for people. They may have to sell because their property taxes went up so high. Is that a thing in Orlando?
We
You
have we have
homestead
we
there.
have homestead, yeah. So the great majority of that's, I mean, Florida is such a tax shelter for so many people that they come here just to get homestead, and then they get the taxes, the no state income tax plus the tax cap on their real estate tax as well. So it's a win-win for them.
It's a proposal here to have a no state income tax
Really?
in Louisiana. Yeah, I think it's a terrible
What's your sales
idea.
tax?
For it's 8%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's 6.5 here, which is that's how they
Yeah.
say that they pay for everything. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So the math ain't mathin', is it? Is it?
No.
Ken, I want to tell everybody that you are on YouTube. If anybody's looking in the Orlando area and wants to know more information about the real estate market in Orlando, you're going to want to check out Ken's YouTube channel. Have you seen it? Look at that. Look,
That's me.
he's all black and white and mystery looking, like, so he's deep and
and
contemplating.
then purple when you're over here, so
Yeah, it's so weird that we have the same exact color background. Seems like we're in the
I
same
know.
room when we're not.
It's so funny.
So, yeah, so Ken covers it all, whether Elon Musk is gonna buy into Orlando or, and he talks about the villages. I've been out there, used to work there. I got fired from the
That's a wild
villages.
place.
It is a wild place.
The retirees' playground, the villages is.
Yeah. No, I won't even say it, but it is the number one problem in the United States for one specific thing, and you guys can look
Yeah.
up that statistic. And let's just say the elderly just still get active. That's all there is.
They don't care.
They do not care. They're like, I don't have time left. Who cares? But if you do need a referral for a real estate agent in your specific area that's outside of Orlando, you can go visit my website right there. Whoop. Just click on any of the pink buttons and hit the either collaboration if you're a brand or a company, or you can book a time with me for if you're looking for a referral. I'll give you a call. We'll talk about your real estate needs. Make sure you fill out the phone number part, because I can't call you if I don't have your phone number. And then we'll talk about what you're looking for. And I have, I'm connected with thousands of real estate agents. People know who I am. Believe it or not, my name is in a book. Did you know that, Ken?
I did not. Which book?
Yeah. The YouTube formula.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, Daryl Eves wrote a book.
The guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So I am connected with lots of people around the United States, and I'm going to be connecting with them on Tuesday in LA. So if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button for this video. And on Tuesday, you're going to see my video where I talk about good old Jerome Powell and what that means for you if you are looking for an affordable housing option in your specific area, because I got a lot to say about it, believe it or not, like I did on today's show. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for the opportunity. This is awesome. You're a legend. I appreciate it.
I'm a legend. Give me a break. I'm just Kristina. There's nothing legendary about me. Other than I was in a book.
That's
Other than I was in a book. Any parting words for everybody?
No, that's it. I appreciate it. Anything I could do in Orlando, please let me know. And yeah, this has been awesome. Appreciate the time.
We had almost 600 people on the stream. I want to thank each and every one of you that did show up today and spend the last hour and 25 minutes with me. I also want to say thank you to our moderators who have made sure that the chat stayed clean, because we do get some trolls on here, and they come out here every single week and spend that whole hour and a half with us. So I appreciate you guys.
Got nothing else to do.
Thank you. Everybody be safe, stay out of trouble, don't talk to strangers, and look both ways before crossing. Bye-bye. You got to wave goodbye. Normally Eddie has music. Oh, here he goes. He's going to have the music. This is my little hip thing. I wasn't feeling very dancey today because the real estate market isn't very dancey. You're not going to dance? There we go. There we go.